Morning. We're on Daf Chaf Hey Amid Aleph. We're learning as this chutz for Shlema, for Ilana Chayev Aserach and Shira Bashalamas. Got a message this morning that she was out of the ICU and into like a regular thing, and she's even stood up. So they did like this. She's a mamash anais. The doctors are saying that there were like 7 different things that could have killed her. Any one of her injuries was enough to kill her. So she was really beat the odds in an incredible way. But she still needs a big refuah. So to Mishma on Chafei Amar Aleph. Nishbach Adam al Ritzba va'asvay pasal. Let's see what this means. Nishbach al Ritzba. Rashi says mitzavet behemah shaloi niskabel b'kli. It doesn't mean that you makabel the dam of a carbon in a kli and then if it's spilled. It means if it went straight when you shechted the animal, before it got into the kli, it went onto the ground. That's going to be pasal. This is going to be the minolan. Where does this come from? So we say we learned in a brisa. It says in the pasuk, this is talking about the chatas brought by a kohen gadol, the par kohen Mashiach, and it says midam hapar. We interpret, what does that mean? Midam hapar, midam hanefesh. It has to be the dam of the par, meaning the life of the par, the live par. The loy midam ha'or. It can't be either the dam. This is what the Gemara is describing as the dam of the oir, the dam of the skin, which would be the dam that you use for Kabbalah. You're not yotza when you cut the animal's skin and it starts to bleed like a regular cut. That is not the dam of the par, of the life of the par. But loy midam atamtis, neither does it mean the dam that oozes out after the lifeblood of the animal came out. They used to cut the jugular vein, and the actual dam, the basic dam that kept the animal alive, the dam that was being pumped out by the heart of the animal. So it can't be from the skin before that lifeblood came out, and not the dam atamtis, not the blood that oozes out after the lifeblood has come out, but rather dam hapar. Dam mehapar yikabledo. It means you have to get the dam directly from the par. So that we darshan. So besides the fact of which dam it's talking about, that it means the lifeblood, it also tells you dam mehapar yikableno. It has to come directly from the par, and that's where our Mishnah got that if the dam if the blood instead of going directly into the kli, spurted onto the ground and then you scooped it up, that's going to be possible. One might have thought you could interpret this pasuk in a different way. If you would think bidama par kedichsev, maybe it means like the pasuk sounds like the pashut pshat. It means from part of the dam of the par. It needs some portion of it. Usually when we say a may, it always tells you from, not all. It's the way the standard limud in a pasuk is. So why are we doing it differently? Meaning, it's coming to tell you even a portion of a dam. But Rav says, he has Yehuda Amarav, Hashoichet tzarich sheyekabel es kol damei shel par. Lichatchila, when the sheichet does shchita for a carbon, he has to be mekabel all of the dam. Lechatchila, he has to get all the dam. Shenemar ves kol damei yishpoich, because it says all of the blood should be poured out. So what we're going to get to, as kol damei yishpoich has its problem, there are going to be obvious issues with that, but this brisa tells you, or Rabbi Yehuda Rav tells you, that from the pasuk is kol damei yishpach, we learn out that you have to get all the dam. So it's not possible to say midam hapar means part of the dam. You just need some of the dam, because that would be 2 contradictory psukim. So it must not be that it's midam hapar from the dam of the par, but rather it must mean the dam comes directly from the par. Like we said before, it has to be the lifeblood of the par. Ella, so therefore we have to interpret it like we want it to be. Dam hapar, dam me hapar yikablenu, which means you should be makabel the dam directly from the par without any diversions. Because Sava Goirin umaisifin v'darshan. And this man, the Amr, who says that we darshan it instead of dam hapar, we learn dam hapar, midam hapar. I'm sorry, dam me hapar yikablenu. Instead of you move basically the mem from the dam to the hapar. Instead of saying midam hapar, you say dam me hapar. And that is, of course, this man, the Amr holds you can take away a letter and move it over and darshan it that way. So the Gemara asks, Gufa, Amar Rav Amarav, Hashechet Tzarech Sheikabel is called Dami Shel Par. It says in the pasuk, the Sheikhet has to be Mekabel all the dam of the par. Shenema has called the dam hapar yishbach, which is not an accurate recounting of the pasuk. It says on the side, "V'nos on the koyim min hadam al karnis hamizbeach, k'teres hasan of the Shema Shabbat Yomoy." It's called dam hapar yishbach al yisoid hamizbeach. After the kohen does after he does the nesinas dam on the keren by Echatos, then afterwards all the leftover dam is called a dam apar yishbach al yisoid hamizbeach. He should pour it on the foundation of the mizbeach ha'olah asher pesach ha'ilmayit, which is in the ilmayit. So Zok Gemara Abashirayim Ksiv. We wanted to use this. We said that it says it's called dam hapar yishbach, but that's not talking about Kabbalah Saddam. And we said that we brought that as a raya that it can't be when it says dam hapar. I mean, some of the dam of the par is makabel because it says kol dam hapar yishbach, which we said means that all the dam of the par you have to do a Kabbalah on. But that pasuk that you brought as the raya for that is talking about the shirayim. It's talking about the leftover blood after the zrika. It's not during the avodas hatam at all. So the Gemara says no. We have to obviously when it says it's called dam apar yishbach, it can't mean that you have to pour all the dam on the yisoid because you did already zrika with some of the dam, or you did nesinas dam in the case of a chatas, you put it on the karnis hamizbeach. So it's impossible to say on that it's kol dam hapar yishbach. So therefore, today when you're in Kabbalah, so we move it over, we reapply it to say it's talking about Kabbalah. On Chofhei Amid Aleph, 6 lines from the bottom. Amr Yehuda Amr Shmuel, Hasheichet Tzarech she'yagbi a saken l'mayla. The sheichet, after he shechs the animal for the carbon, so right, we say he does the Kabbalah Saddam, and it has to be the dam directly from the animal. So in order to comply with this pasuk that we just said, he has to pick up after he shechts, he can't let the blood from the knife drip into the klishars. You can only be the dam hapar and not anything else. And this is not the dam hapar. This is going into klishars, not dam that's coming directly from the animal. It's going onto the knife and then going into the klishars. So that would passel the dam. So what do you have to do with the dam that's on the sakin, on the knife? He does it on the outside of the klishars. Doesn't join with the rest of the dam, but he does it on the outside of klishars. You can't just, it's kaddish, you can't just dispose of the dam stamazai. Kedechsev kipurei zav. Like it says, kipurei, the Lashon of Rashi says, kipurei zav, kari lemizrak, and that's what they call the bowls, the klisharis that they would put the dam into. B'sefer Ezra, al shem kinuach, k'dam b'sechtas chun, ikabelesa the priest lemechberei. That means Rashi brings a few examples that the word kapara means to wipe. When we get a kapara for our virus, it means it's wiping away our sins. So when it says over here, kipurei zav, it means that they would wipe the knife on the outside of the kli to get rid of the dam, so it shouldn't mix in with the dam inside of the kli. Amar of Chizda, Amar of Yirmiyam, Barab, Hashoichet, the person who shechs a animal for a carbon, tzarch sheyitin vridin l'soicha kli. He has to put the veins of the animal into the kli. Obviously, it doesn't. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, because the Rambam says it means literally. When you shecht an animal, there's a veshet, which is the trachea. It's not a blood vessel. That's the actual throat. But then there's the vridin, are the veins or the arteries. I don't know which one it is that are conveying the blood, and that's where the blood comes out of. He cuts that as well. So the Rambam says it means literally. You have to pull out those veins and stick them into the klishars. Rashi says in the top Rashi, the heavy Kabbalah me'apar shaper, vaytech lav davka. Doesn't mean that you should pull the veins into the kli. It's not possible. El alavir shel techa kli. He has to put the neck of the animal right on top of the kli, so it goes directly into the kli. Because, like we said, you need that it should go directly from the par into the klishars. Itmanami, Amar Avasi, Amar Aviyechanav, Vridin Tzarch Shiru Avir Kli. The Vridin have to be directly over the Kli. Bo Minin Avasi, Amar Aviyechanav. Hayim what happens if he was Mekabel the Dami? He shechted the animal for a carbon, and it was going into the Kli. V'nivchasu Shulei Mizrak. Actually, Dam Lavia. If the bottom of the klishars fell out, it's been in service for a number of years. The bottom got worn out, and as he shechs the animal, the blood starts going out. It's suspended in air. It's not yet within the airspace of the kli, and at that point, the bottom of the klisharis disappears. It falls apart. What's going to be the din? What's the din? What's the question? Do we say we have a general rule that avir shesoifel lenuach is kamunach, something that's going to fall? We look at it; it's going to land. We look at it as if it's already landed. So this, even though it's not going to land because the bottom has disappeared, but since it was going to land originally, so we look at it as if it's kamunach dami. I love kamunach dami. Do we say nah? Amalei, Tanisua, I'll bring you a raya. This is going to be talking about the water that's used for the para aduma. The para aduma had to use mayim chayim. It had to use live water, not water that had been collected into a non-klishars, right? You could just like a mikvah. You can't put it into a barrel and then carry it over to your mikvah. That's why it's such a big deal to make a mikvah. So it has to go directly from the source into the klishars. So in a mikvah, it has to go into a mikvah, but for the mayim chayim, for the para aduma, the water has to go directly into a klisharis. So this water was bounding down the side of a mountain, and it says, "Chavis shemunachas tachas hazinuk." So you have a pipe that's conveying this water. A pipe is not considered a kli, because the pipe, since it has holes on both ends, it doesn't contain anything within it. It doesn't hold it. It just passes through, and it's going down this pipe. And you have a chavis that's not a kli sharis. So chavis shemunachas tachas hazinuk, mayim shebesoicha shebechutza psulin. The water that is in it, the water that's inside. Let me see Rashi. Mayim shebesoicha shebechutza psulin. Kloima shlitin kli l'toich avira v'yachzena biyadai. You shouldn't put a kli into the avir that's where the water comes out of the pipe. Meaning, if you have this chavis underneath the nizik, you can't put your kli in between to get the water. Even over the airspace of this barrel, which is not a kli sharis, once the water has come opposite the top of the barrel, it's as if it's coming to rest in the barrel, which is not a kli sharis. So it's no longer mayim chayim. It lost its din of chiyus. And the need that the water should go directly mayim chayim into the kli, the kiddush. So you see from here that since the water is destined to land on the bottom of the barrel, you can't stick a kli in between to grab the water before it lands, because once it's going to land in the barrel, it already is as if it landed. Now, the Gemara Rashi points out there's an obvious difference between this and the case that we just spoke about. The case we just spoke about is talking about where the bottom disappeared. So we're talking about Avasha ain't Seifel Enoch. So you bring a raya from Seifel Enoch, and the Gemara is going to ask that question in a minute.
What's the issue here? Because you're not using a kli sharis?
No, you are using a kli. The question is that what the Bryce is saying is that if you're using a kli sharis to gather the water, but the water that you're gathering was coming out of the pipe and it was headed and it left the pipe and it was in the airspace over the chavis, which is not a kli sharis. And this person the kayan wants to go and stick the kli sharis in between before the water gets into the chavis. So the Bryce is saying it's too late. Once it got into that avir, into the airspace above, or the air above the airspace of the chavis, it's as if it's already in the chavis, so it's too late. It already is no longer mayim chayim. Zok the Gemara. Tzir of peel in Nizik. But if you took your kli sharis and you put it over the pipe so that the water should go directly from the pipe into the kli sharis, mayim shebeseicha psulin. If the water got out of the pipe, I guess he didn't put it directly over the pipe, but he put it right by the pipe. So if the water had any opportunity, let's put it. I'm sorry. Let's see how Rashi says it. Tzir of peel nizik she'ein avir mafzik ben peel et sinur. He put the chavis, I guess, close to right next to the opening of this pipe. So the mayim shebeseicha klem shebola toich avir doif neiseo that came into the walls of the barrel psulin shebechutzola, but if it's outside of the walls of the barrel, afal pisha keneged avira ksherin shadayin lepirshim natzinu vafilu avir enkan. I think it means that you put your kli into the pipe. So even though that pipe is inside of the barrel, but since your kli, it goes directly from the tziner into your kli and never had a chance to be exposed to the chavis. So therefore, it's not going to have a din of mayim that was nifsak, that became non-mayim chayim before it went directly into your kli sharis. Sak Gemara. fact, so the Gemara say this is l'chayra raya that avir shesoifel lenuach is kamunach dami. So Gemara, hi mai, boy mine avir she'en soifel lenuach, but kaposhel avir shesoifel lenuach. Why we bring a raya from a case where the chavas is intact, that we say that when the water is exposed to the area above the chavas, it's treated as if it already came down. Obviously, it's treated as if it already came down because our question was only because our kli sharis, in our case, where we're saying that it's backwards. In that case over there, the seifel anuach makes it puzzle. In our case, the seifel anuach makes it kosher. But in our case, we're saying it's not seifel anuach because there was no bottom. The bottom had disappeared before the dam reached the kli. I shake it over there. It's talking about a perfectly healthy chavas. Really, there were two questions. If you'll say that airspace that's not going to land is not kamunach dami, we want to know. It's two separate questions. Even if you'll say she'ein seifel lenuach is not kamunach dami, maybe who says that seifel lenuach is kamunach dami? Maybe even if it's intact. So that's why we brought this as a raya, at least for that far. That seifel lenuach is kamunach. But we don't have a direct response to the original question. But we want to at least clarify to the extent we can that something that seifel lenuach is kamunach dami. Rav Yosef Masni Hachi. This was Rav Yosef's version of this. Rav Kahana Masni. Rav Kahana had a different version of what the question was. He had chavas ba'amine. They asked a question about a chavas. What's the din over there by Mayim Chayim, by the Mayim of the Para Aduma? He questioned whether it's considered to be munach when it's in the air above the kli. Upasha le chavas, and he answered. You see that by a chavas that's the din. Rashi chavas ba'amine. He hadn't heard of this mission about chavas. And they brought him this mission that he wasn't aware of. So this that we answered over here, he wasn't aware of that mission. Rabba Masni Chavas, Masni, his version of the question was Chavas Ba'amine. He had the same version like Rav Kahana, that the question was that Mayim that's flying above a Chavas, whether it's kamunach dami. Upachale Mizrak. And Adarabah, he brought the raya fakir from what we had said. We had asked the question by Mizrak, by our dam, whether lav kamunach is kamunach dami, and we try to answer from Chavas. He had it the other way. The question was by Chavas, and we answered it from the din of dam in a kli. What was his raya? He said every time you shecht an animal, he said it's not possible that the dam goes straight down into the kli. When you shecht an animal, the blood spurts and it goes toward the side a little bit. It's not straight down. So a little bit before it starts heading down into the kli, it's like going horizontally above the kli. And at that point, it's not, if you say that something that's shabavir is not kamunach, so then you wouldn't generally you'd be unable to be yaitza unless you were able to be mechaven to get the spurting of the dam to go straight down. You'll never be yaitza, that which we said, you need dam in a par, that the dam should go directly from the par into the klisharis, because it had a little bit of time that it was going horizontally, so it wasn't coming mikayach the par. It wasn't kamunach. So that was his raya. Since it's not possible to have, it wouldn't be possible to ever have a kosher Kabbalah, it must be that even though it's not going directly into the kli, it's ba'avir kli is kamunach dami. Weiter on this topic. Tanan Hasan. Nosan yodai ay raglai ay ala yarakos. This is back to the water. Now we're not talking about in a pipe. We're talking about water really going directly down the side of a mountain that you want to use for the mechatas, for the paraduma water. And obviously, when you have water going down the side of a mountain, you have to get some way to direct it into the klisharis. It's going to be hard to gather it, like just floating down in a stream. So he wants to divert the water into the klisharis. So we say nothing yoda yaraglo aliyara, because if he used his hand or his foot, or he used like a lettuce, some kind of edible leaves, to divert the water into the klisharis, psulin, it's going to be possible. But if you used leaves from reeds or leaves from nuts, these are all leaves that are not edible, kshera. Why is that? Something that's makabel tuma, if you use that to divert the water, that's going to passel the water. But if it's something that's not makabel tuma, like we said, like the leaves of nuts or the leaves of reeds, then it's kosher. Where does this come from? That there's a chiluk of how you direct the water. The pasuk says, the pasuk says that the ma'ayin and the bar, the spring or the pit, and the mikveh mayim or the gathering of water, tar, it should be tar. But we dash in tar. What does that mean? Yetar haviyasan al yedei tayrote. That when it comes into being, it has to be with something that's tar. So when it comes from it's being a mayim chayim into a klisharis, it can't be through something that's tameh. So if you use your hand, it doesn't mean tameh even. It's something that's able to be makabel tumah. If he uses his hand or his foot or food, or like a leaf of an edible plant, all those things could be makabel tumah. And that's not al yedei taira. Amar b'chi amar Rav Yochanan zois emeres avir kli kekli dami. He says this proves to you that the avir of a kli is kekli, because he says once we're allowing you to use a leaf of an egois to divert the water has to be directly from mayim chayim. But if this water is going through the air, it hits the leaf and it gets splashed into the air, and then it goes into the klisharis. So it didn't come directly from the mayim chayim. It had a little bit of time that it was flying through the air when it wasn't going from the mayim chayim el keli. It wasn't going. You didn't have that direct connection from the live water into the kli. So it must be that even though it's flying through the air after it hits the leaf, it still is kamunach dami in the kli immediately. He says, no, you don't have a raya for that. Maybe it's not talking about water that's gushing down the side of the mountain. It's talking about water that's slowly trickling down, and it drips. It goes on the leaf, and it goes directly from the leaf into the kli, and it never flies through the air. Amalei, tirda. He said to him, tirda, Rashi. I'm not going to translate it. I'm just going to read the Rashi. Tirda, shoita bahol, mixed up shoita.
Use lose next to the word.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So he said it. I didn't. That's the way they talked, and they got very excited about their learning.
This is before Chafetz Chaim.
Could they say, yeah, no? Believe me, I heard people even after the Chafetz Chaim. You ever heard these old mirrors like arguing? They'd call each other's names. Like when I was going out with my wife, I said a shtickle Torah to her grandfather who learned in the mirror. He was a Rosh Shiva in Tervadas, and he was talking to me in Yiddish, and my wife didn't understand Yiddish, and he started yelling at me. And my wife thought the shidduch was gone. She thought I was going to have to leave but he was enjoying himself. That was the way they talked. And then he said, what are you talking about? It says it says that the water should pass into the chavis. It's not talking about a trickle. It's talking about a forceful spring of water. So it is a raya that ba'avir is kamunach dami. We know this halacha that this is true from the edusa of Reb Tzadok. The Tanan Heid Reb Tzadok said edus ala zoichlin on the pouring water. Shafilchan Bali a Geizim, that he used a Geizim to direct them, saying Sharon, that they're kosher. So he said that he testified that this is the case. Is a place where they didn't have a problem. They said it was kosher. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Tomorrow we're going to
Thank
some
you,
more done.
everyone.
Shkayach.